Mention of the Nile Valley in ancient Indian records. Many people assume that the history of Africa begins and ends on the African continent. This is false. Africans have left their imprint in ancient Eurasia as well. An important part of Africa was the Nile Valley. The Nile Valley was not only the homeland of the ancient Egypt, it was also the place where the Kushites originated. An interesting record of Nile Valley Africans is found in the ancient records of India. These records are written in Sanskrit and Prakrit. As a result, we find mention of the Nile Valley in Pali and Purana texts. The word Purana means ancient, old. It is the literature written in India in the Sanskrit language. Prakrit is any ancient or medieval vernacular dialect of northern and central India that existed alongside Sanskrit. Pali was a Prakrit language of India used by Buddhists to write their canonical texts. Many of us have heard about the fact that the ancient texts of India, called the Purana and Pali texts, provide valuable information on the Nile Valley history. In this video, we will discuss the research of Dr. Lenny Srinivasan, an Indian linguist and Indologist. Dr. Srinivasan has published many articles and books on the presence of Mesopotamia and Nile Valley people in the Rig Veda, Puranas, and Pali documents. Dr. Srinivasan, in her article Myths, Metaphors, and Dravidians, provides considerable information on Upper and Lower Egypt. In ancient Indian texts, the Nile Valley was called Kushite or Kushland. The inhabitants of Kushite were mainly named Kashi in the Indian text. Other people living in Kushite were called Nehesi or Hekakasut. Also appears in the epic Puranas. In the Puranas, Hekakasut is Ishkavaku or Haku Kasut. The Ishkavaku were seen as evil. The Ishkavaku worshipped Set. The people in Upper and Lower Nubia in the Nile Valley were called Kashus or Haksut by the ancient Egyptians. The Rig Veda provides considerable information on the Kushites of Nubia and Anatolia. These people belong to the Kushite Confederation. The term Kushite was a generic term for the tribes that belonged to the Confederation living in the Nile Valley, Levant, and Anatolia. Dr. Srinivasan notes that the Nile Valley Kush was called Kushadvipa, or Kush. In the Puranas, we have Kushanila in the Pali text. The Puranas and Pali are the names given to ancient Vedic Indian texts. In the Indian text, Rama's sons were Lava and Kush. Ancient Libya was called Lava, and Kush in the Nile Valley was called Kusha in the various ancient Indian texts. In the Puranas, Kusha was southern Nubia or Upper Kush. In the Purana, northern Nubia or Lower Kush was called Kruncha. The main urban center in Kusha was Kashi. Kashi was described as a great city in Pali and Purana texts. Dr. Srinivasan made it clear that the Rig Veda king named Devadwasa, servant of Deva, in the Mahabharata. Devadasi was an ancient king of Kashi. And as I have mentioned earlier, in the Puranic text, Kashi was in Nubia. The inhabitants of the Fazan were round-headed Africans. The cultural characteristics of the Fanans were analogous to what we call the C group culture, and these were the people who founded one of the first civilizations in our valley called Tasseti. The C group people occupied the Sudan and Fazan region between 3700 and 1300 BC. The inhabitants of Libya were called Temehus. The Temehus were organized into two groups. The Tehanu in the north and the Nehesi in the south. A Tehanu personage is depicted on Amrathian period pottery. The Tehanu wore a pointed beard, phallic sheath, and feathers on their head. The Tamil belonged to the Nehesi, and the Telugu and Kannada belonged to the Tehanu Confederation. In the Puranas and Pali texts, Nehesi corresponds to Mandaean Nahas, the name of the underworld abode of the serpent Ur, the metaphoric name for Nubia. A major Kushite nation and tribe were the Wawat. The Egyptian semi-vowel changes in Sanskrit from Y into V. Srinivasana believes that Yayati was the name for Vawat. So in other words, in the Pali text, instead of finding the term Wawat, this W changes to a V or Y, so we get either Yavati or Yavati. We also find in Purana that a tribe was named Vasha or Vasishata. The Vasha tribe corresponds to the Wasi, or the Waset tribe or nation. Srinivasana, according to Srinivasana, was the name for Thebes. It was also the name for the Nehesi, one of the Waset tribes. In the myth of Vishabhamitra, these people lived on the other side of Saraswati. The alternate name for Vishabhamitra was Kushika, or Kusha. The Sumerians traded with Ponta Meluha. Meluha was the home of the Magi. The Magi served as mercenaries in the Egyptian army. Malaya was an ancient people country in the Nile Valley. The Vayu Purana said that the Maya Dvipa was Nanam Lecha Gana Krina, a place where mercenaries were created. This passage in the Vahu Purana suggests that Malaya or Imlecha was Meluha or Punt of the Sumerians. Meluha was a place where Egyptians recruited mercenaries. This passage in the Vahu Purana makes it clear that there was a continued relationship between Africans in Africa and other Africans who had migrated to India. In the Puranas, we see the name Dravida. The Dravida was the Purana name for the Tamil. There is mention of Nahusha, which corresponds to the 15th dynasty king Nahashi. The Hekakasut, rulers of the Kushites, or Hyksos, were Hadians or Kashus. In other words, they were Kushites. This is obvious in the name Kashut, which corresponds to Kashka. The name Hekakashut was first used by the Old Kingdom to refer to the Kushite Nubian chieftains. That is why the Hyksos expected the Kushites of Nubia to support them in their war with the Egyptians. During the 5th dynasty of Egypt, 2563 to 2423 BC, namely during the reign of King or Pharaoh Sahure, there is mention of the Tehenu people. Sahure referred to the Tehenu leader as Hati Tehenu. The Hatiyu correspond to the Hatti-speaking people of Anatolia. The Hatti or Hurrian people often refer to themselves as Kashka or Kaskas. During the Old Kingdom, the Kushites were also called Hekakashut. The term Hekakashut was used for the kings of the Nile Valley, Kushites, and the Hyksos. The term Hekakashut appears in line 46 of the Winnie inscription. The Nehesi or Sea Group people began to settle Kush around 2200 BC. The kings of Kush had their capital at a city called Kerma. Kerma in the Dongola region of the Nile Valley was a sanctuary center on a place called Sai Island. The same pottery found at Kerma is also present in Libya, especially the Fezzan. The Sea Group founded the Kerma dynasty of Kush. Diab noted, and I quote, that the earliest substratum of the Libyan population was a black population from the South Sahara, unquote. Kerma was first inhabited in the 4th millennium BC. By the 2nd millennium BC, the Kushites at Kerma were already worshippers of Ammon or Ammah. and they used a distinctive black and red wear. Ammon, or Amma, later became a major god of the Egyptians during the 18th dynasty. Proto-Saharans, the Kushites, expanded into Inner Asia from two primary points of dispersal, Iran and Anatolia. In Anatolia, the Kushites were called Hattians and Kashka. In the second millennium BC, the north and east of Anatolia was inhabited by non-Indo-European speakers. Anatolia was divided into two lands, the land of Kanis and the land of Hatti. The Hatti were related to the Kashka people who lived in the Pontic Mountains. Hattians lived in Anatolia. They worshipped Kashu and Kasuk. They were especially prominent in the Pontic Mountains. Their sister nation in the Halys Basin were the Kashka tribes. The Kashka and Hattians shared the same name for gods, along with personal and place names. The Kashka had a strong empire which was never defeated by the Hittites. Singer has suggested that the Kashka are remnants of the indigenous Hattian population which was forced northward by the Hittites. But as late as the 1800 BC, Anatolia was basically settled by Hattians. Anatolia was occupied by many Kushite groups, including Kashkas and Hattis. The Hatti, like the Dravidian-speaking people, were probably related. The Hatti were probably members of the Tehanu tribes. The Tehanu was composed of various ethnic groups. One of the Tehanu tribes was identified by the Egyptians as Hattiu, or Hattiu. During the 5th dynasty, they were really popular, and we also find this whole idea of the Hatti Tehanu. They had their kingdom at Kusara. The earliest known ruler of Kusara was Pitcairn. It was his son, Anita, who expanded the Kusara Empire throughout much of Anatolia. The Hurrians lived in Mitanni. Mitanni was situated on the great bend of Upper Euphrates River. Hurrian was spoken in eastern Anatolia and North Syria. Srinivasan claims the Hurrian tribe was mentioned in the Rigveda, called Hastuk, elephant herd. The individual Hurrian was called Hasti, or Kasti. Srinivasan made it clear that Hasti corresponds to Egyptian Nehisti, or Hatti, or Tasedi. The Egyptians spoke a Mandi language. The Rigveda claimed that the father of the Hurrians, or Hastuk, was the Elamite king Kudar Mubat. The Mandi and Dravidian speakers usually migrated together into various parts of Eurasia. Asoka Prakrit inscriptions mention several Dravidian tribes, including the Cholas, the Seras, Tamil, the Keras, Karauputra, the Pandya, the Shiras, and the Sate Putra. The Cholas were Telugu speakers. The Cholas were related to the Naga. The Naga were supposed to have lived in Naga Loka, in the underworld. Srinivasan believes the Purana underworld, Nagaloka, was located in Upper Nubia. The Chola kings in the Puranas were called Ishkavatskus, or Hekakashut, like the Nehesi kings of the Nile Valley, Hishkava Kushhakti, or Kasut. The Chola came to India with a great knowledge of war, strategy, charioteering, shipbuilding, and navigation. The Chola are related to the Naga. This is evident in the story of the romance between the Chola and Naga princes. Srinivasan wrote in both legends that the son of their union came from Nagaloka in Patal, was a real country of Upper Nubia. The myths point to a connection of the Chola with Nubia. To realize some important points of similarities, the Cholas and the great Nepadan kingdom of Nubia. The royal title of the Chola was Kora or Shora. Among the Tamils, Chola is pronounced with an R. As a result, in Prakrit inscriptions, Chola is written as Sora, Kora. Srinivasan suggests that Korites of the Bible may be the same people. A coastal region of East India was called Coromandel, or Coromandel, the domain of the Korai. Korai is a dynastic name for the Cholas. The royal insignia of the Chola was snakes. Twin serpents was a popular symbol of royalty among the Nepadan kings. The Nepadan Kushite double crown was worn by the rulers of Kerma. It was called the double Wajit crown. The Wajit crown was worn by Taharka. In summary, the Telugu speakers belonged to the Tehenu and Nehesi tribes of Nubia, or Kush, in the Nile Valley. The Telugu and Egyptian languages share many terms because the Cholas came from Kashi, or Kush, which was called Kushite. They migrated into Anatolia and formed several city-states, including the Hurrian, Mitanni, and Kushite states, and were members of the Hatti Confederation. The major Telugu state in India was Chola. In the Puranas, the Chola were also called Kora, Shora or Kori. The Chola who came to India by land and sea settled on the Coromandel coast. It takes its name from the word Korai, one of the names for the Chola dynasty. Ancient Telugu continued in India to refer to themselves as Hakakasut or Ishyavakush. The royal insignia for the Cholas were two snakes. The two snakes as symbols of royalty goes back to the Napatan kings of Kush, Nubia, who wore a double wajid crown.